The biggest thing for me is that I wanted to be respected as far as the trade goes, working with my hands. I didn't want to feel lesser than like I kind of had growing up. I didn't want to feel as though people looked down on me for what I did. I didn't know how to kind of command that respect of other people when I was starting my business. So what made the most sense for me, and which was probably a very natural evolution, is I just wanted to be the best. I wanted to do everything by the book. I wanted to follow the rules. I wanted to learn to do everything the right way. I guess I kind of hit my stride, right? And I started to be more confident in what I was doing. And I started to be more successful in business. A lot of my self-worth and my self-esteem came through business. Welcome back, everyone. It's your weekly recording of Midweek, Modern Craftsman, with yours truly, Tyler Grace. I hope you guys have been enjoying this. I have. It's been a nice way to kind of step back, get my thoughts on paper, and kind of create a little bit of peace in my life and some self-reflection. So that's been fun. I've enjoyed it a lot. All right, so this week's podcast and blog has to do with the name Modern Craftsman and kind of where that came from and what I feel it means to be a modern craftsman. I'm going to start this podcast off by saying that this is something we've ran into over the years, and it's something that I've always felt needed to be addressed, and I'm going to address it now. But the singular form of modern craftsman is not reserved for males only. It's not gender specific. It's whoever kind of embodies what we feel is a modern craftsman. And I think a lot of times I feel as though I need to preface or kind of preface that statement by saying men and women, guys and girls. But I think that if any of you have spent any time around a woman in your life, if you have daughters, if you're married, if you have a girlfriend, if you've witnessed childbirth, which is fucking insane, but you know that women are unequivocally tougher and stronger than men, and most likely more capable than us to do anything. They generally smell better than men. They're prettier than men, but they are well deserved to be included in this modern craftsman term. So I just wanted to get that out there for everyone. It's not for males only, but moving on, at least I have that out of the way. So the story and the impetus behind this blog post has been on my mind lately. And I would believe at this point you've had an opportunity to hear the podcast with Drew from Slash. But he kind of dug into, with Nick and myself, what our goal is with the Modern Craftsman, what we stand for, what it means to be a modern craftsman, and what that brand kind of entails, and what this community means to us. And he was looking for, what motivates us to stand behind this brand. So that kind of got me thinking about, that moniker, the Modern Craftsman, and if I'm doing all that I can to kind of uphold the ethos behind that. And anyway, I've been thinking a lot about what it means to be a modern craftsman, and what it means to be a craftsman, and what it means to work with your hands, both literally and figuratively. I've thought a lot about what it means to grow up in a working class family, what that's going to mean for my daughters. And maybe it sounds crazy to think that in 2023 that, hey, people are going to be judged for being working class, but it still happens, and it's something to consider. And, 10 years ago, prior to having kids, I probably would not have considered that. But when you're bringing another life into this world, you weigh out a lot of decisions, right? I weighed out potential decisions with names because they've rhymed with something phallic or completely inappropriate. And I didn't want my daughters or son, because we didn't find out what we were having, to be teased their entire life by some jerk like me when they were younger because their name rhymed with something that was inappropriate. So there's a lot of considerations as you grow older and mature, and you've lived a fair amount of life to realize that there's certain things you don't want to do. And I've thought a lot about why I care about all this, right? What does this industry mean to me? What does this community mean to me? Why is it so important? Um, what is so important to me and so strong about the craft and the culture that kind of revolves around this community, and encouraging our youth and trying to grow awareness around what we're doing. And I think that a lot of these thoughts and a lot of what ties into this is kind of indicative of what it means to be a modern craftsman. So that's where this blog post came from. That's where this podcast came from. Truth is, I recorded this yesterday and I got done. I was laying in bed and I'm thinking to myself, I don't think I hit the mark there. Like it was good. I liked it and I enjoyed doing it, but I don't feel like I really clearly articulated what my point was. I don't think that it came off across as it should have. So here I am now recording this again because I want it to be the best that it can be for you guys. So we're going to start off with a little bit of my personal background, which you guys may or may not know already. But I grew up, I'm one of five. I grew up in a fairly affluent town, and it was definitely white collar. There's some working class in the town. There still is, but it was more of a white collar town. And we were definitely blue collar. My dad owned his own business. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. Like I said, I was one of five. My siblings and myself are all within 6 years of each other. So it was like bam, 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 a bunch of kids, insanity, crazy. And my dad just pretty much worked all the time. His goal was to invest in real estate. So he had a contracting business, and then he would buy rentals and kind of fix them up, get them occupied, and then pay down the mortgage on them. That was the goal, and to be able to retire off that. It didn't happen. My parents got split up. It got very messy. So that plan kind of went out the window. But growing up, we were very cash poor. We didn't have a pot to piss in. And I knew that we didn't really fit in. Just there were things that other kids had that we didn't have. I tell people a story, and I can't believe that I'm telling this on the air, but my dad was scrappy. When we needed new bicycles, instead of buying us bicycles, he would take us to the police impound in town and have us tell the police officers that they were our bikes that got stolen, which they weren't. They were stolen bikes, but they weren't ours. So we would get stolen bikes from the police impound for our own bikes. So my dad essentially was stealing bikes from the police. Looking back now, I feel like they had to know it because we would be back there all the time. But that's how I got bikes growing up. So we didn't have too much. And I knew that I didn't fit in. And my dad, as far as business goes, he wasn't really promoting craft. He wasn't celebrating craft. He wasn't pushing and promoting quality. He had his hands full, and he was just trying to make ends meet and get it done as fast as he could. And I respect the hustle. Back then it was a lot, and I didn't love it. And I think that it created a fair amount of self-esteem issues growing up. But looking back on it, I believe that he did the best that he could do. My parents both did the best that they can do. I don't have any hangups with growing up. I don't regret anything. I don't wish anything different. I still have a good relationship with my dad. He's a great grandfather. I respect what he's done. We're just different people. But I want to make sure that you guys know I don't have any regrets about my youth. It was a whole lot of fun. And I learned a lot of what not to do, which I believe is just as important as what to do, if not more important. A lot of times learning what not to do is more valuable than what to do. You just have to be able to delineate between the two and understand, hey, I shouldn't do this. I should go 180 degrees from here rather than, hey, maybe I can tiptoe that line. But growing up this way in this town, feeling this way, it didn't really foster a ton of self-confidence, a ton of self-esteem. And I had trouble if you're in a situation where you don't feel that you fit in and you don't have a lot of self-confidence, it's really difficult to command that respect from others because you don't carry yourself in that way. So a lot of times growing up, I would my confidence was developed vicariously through other things like sports or academics. And it wasn't necessarily myself just personally building self-confidence. It was always through something else. And I think that early on in my career, that was probably the same thing. I developed a lot of self-worth and self-confidence through my business, but I no longer lack that self-esteem. I no longer am looking for that validation. I no longer am looking to fit in. Actually, I probably prefer not to fit in anymore, and that's perfectly fine with me. You don't have to bother me. I don't have to fit in. I don't have to have the small talk and everything else, which is interesting because I'm on here talking to myself on a podcast, but I'm completely and utterly content with not feeling the need to fit in because I'm comfortable enough in my own skin. When I was younger, I wasn't comfortable enough in my own skin that I wanted to fit in, because I didn't know who I was, and I didn't feel as though who I was and what I was worthy. So I just didn't want to be that person. I wanted to be somebody else. Moving along to when I first went off on my own, the biggest thing for me, I didn't know anything about business. I knew a little about carpentry, but not too much. But the biggest thing for me is that I wanted to be respected. As far as the trade goes, working with my hands, I didn't want to feel lesser than like I kind of had growing up. I didn't want to feel as though people looked down on me for what I did. And I didn't know how to do that. Excuse me. I didn't know how to kind of command that respect of other people when I was starting my business. So what made the most sense for me, and which was probably a very natural evolution, is I just wanted to be the best. I wanted to do everything by the book. I wanted to follow the rules. I wanted to learn to do everything the right way. And that kind of established this I guess I kind of hit my stride, right? And I started to be more confident in what I was doing, and I started to be more successful in business. And I think that, like I just mentioned, a lot of my self-worth and my self-esteem came through business, right? Because now I'm walking in and I'm feeling more confident in what I'm doing. I'm feeling more confident in my interactions with customers, and that's making me feel better on a personal level. It's giving me a lot of self-worth and a lot of value. And it was probably very similar to when I was younger, where I would use sports and academics to kind of create this self-worth for me, and that was my outlet, right? It was creating that and developing that vicariously through something else. But I leaned heavily early on in my career. I started my business right after college. So, and initially I went to CU Boulder, and I was a science major. And then same issues I had growing up, I kind of felt there, and I got out of there and I dropped out and I started working full time. And then I ended up transferring to Drexel, where I met my wife, Rachel. And I graduated from there with a construction management degree. And when I got done, I knew immediately that I didn't want to work for somebody. I didn't want to work in corporate America. I didn't want to be a project manager for a commercial company. So I started my own business. So that's kind of around this time, 23 to 25, where I'm really getting into things. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know who I am. I'm still developing my personality, developing my business sense, and trying to figure all of this out. But I think that early on, I really developed, and a lot of my identity had to do with my business and not necessarily who I was, right? And I created and let my identity manifest itself through who I was in business. So that was part of my drive to create this business that had no faults and performed work that was very high level. And I didn't want to feel as though people had anything to pick on or any issues with what I was doing. I just wanted to fit in. So thinking about all of this, right, and feeling very alone in these early years when I was 23, 25 of starting my business and not having a ton of people to lean on personally or from a business perspective while I was kind of getting my way about the ropes. It would have been really nice to have a network or a community behind me, somebody to turn to. And it wasn't until years later that I met Nick and I ended up meeting John, and I started to create and form that network of people that let me put my shoulders down, that kind of quelled that anxiety, that I didn't feel so alone. Um, it it would have been really nice to have that early on, and maybe I wouldn't be where I am today had I been. But as I'm thinking about this entire Modern Craftsman name and the brand and what we're looking to create, that's something that really weighs heavily on my mind. How much when that actually came across my plate and when I did develop those relationships, how much they benefited me and my self growth as well as my business growth. But for 10 years of business, I started when I was 23 till I was 33. Um, I busted my ass just to make a name for myself, just like everyone does. I didn't want to fail. I wanted to be the best contractor that I could be. I wanted to do the best work. Anything that I did, I want to do the best. That's just my entire life. That's why I like to do things in moderation, because when I pick them up, it's 150 miles an hour, gas on. I'm not letting off of that fucker. It's full go. So I have to be very careful with what I let and who I let into my life. But for 10 years, I busted my ass to create the best business that I can that suited my lifestyle. I developed a really great customer base. I received the validation that I felt as though I needed. Looking back, I probably just wanted it. I earned a good business. I built my business up. I developed the network of people in my life, coming into 14 years in business, or I'm 14 years in business now, but I have a network of people behind me that allows me to do what I need to do. And I've gained the respect of my peers. I'm now a business owner. I have a family. I'm married. I have a house. Um, I write for Fine Home Building Magazine. I have vendors who come to me looking to produce videos for their products and to work with me. I co-host a podcast. I have a strong social media presence. Um, I think by most people's standards within our industry, they would say that I've been successful, and that you can call it what you will. Everyone defines success differently, but from the outside looking in, it looks fairly successful. And I feel as though I've been fairly successful. Am I the best? No. Am I the worst? No. Maybe I fall somewhere in the middle, but I feel as though with what my goals have been, I've done a good job of getting there, and I'm comfortable and I'm happy and I'm proud of that. But I don't feel as though I've done my job educating, um, spreading my knowledge, sharing my wisdom as I potentially could have. And still to this day, I don't feel as though I'm maximizing my potential there. And this kind of gets me back to where the Modern Craftsman came from. And it was a handful of years ago. I want to say that it was right when Tilly was born, so 6 years ago, but it might have been longer than that. That might have been the second one. But he invited myself, Nick, and John, and then Sean Van Dyke to come up to one of their lumber yards. Actually, it wasn't at their lumber yard. It was at a conference center in Paramus, New Jersey. But shout out to Ryan anyway. He's one of my good friends. He's always supported me my brand, the Modern Craftsman brand. And not only do I like him on a personal level, but I really do like his company. They're not local to me. They're about 2 hours north of me, hour and a half north of me, some of their yards, but they do deliver. I use a lot of their moldings and they deliver that stuff to me. They'll drive it down, they'll put it in a box and ship it to me. I know that they ship stuff nationwide. So check them out if you haven't. This is a plug. They do not sponsor this, but I think they should. Ryan, if you're listening, I think that you should sponsor this. And the listeners said so as well. But Ryan had this event, and one of the questions, it was basically talking about branding and social media, and he kind of coined it this panel discussion with the Modern Craftsman. And we ended up asking, I think Nick asked him if we could steal that name, or John. Nick had already bought the URL and hadn't told him, but I think he knows about that now. But one of the questions was, what do you feel it means to be a modern craftsman? And when I think about that, I back then my tools, what my brain and kind of head went towards was more so the progression of tools and the technology in a more practical sense, and construction software, right? Where you're a craftsman, you spent the time learning the hard skills, but now you're using today's technology to create efficiencies within your business and your systems, and CNCs and panel ready houses. And that's kind of, it went to a very practical approach to that. And when I think of the craftsman aspect of that, I think of a very romantic, raw, and artistic narrative. I imagine the experience that you've gained over the years, that fulfillment that you get from creating something by hand, the tangible virtuosities that we are able to create and make. It's that culture, the creation, the blood, the sweat, the tears, and the passion behind the craft. It's almost, I can imagine in my head what a commercial for the trades and the crafts would be like, and it'd be very dark and slow motion and super moody and sawdust blowing, or like hearing somebody cut through leather, and you would almost be able to feel it. It would be very palpable. So that's where I kind of blend the modern and the craftsman. But what I feel now is different. I don't think that I'm wrong in that sense, but a lot of what I think on more of the modern aspect of that is creating a platform, creating a system, creating a network of people that's more expanding, that you have more reach, that you're able to teach and convey and spread wisdom and knowledge to a greater amount of people. So yeah, it's still about the technology, excuse me, but it's more so, it's less about the practical um, application of that technology, and more of like an abstract application of that. Again, more towards the teaching, the lessons, the sharing, the interviewing, podcasts, um, everything that I would like the Modern Craftsman brand to embody. I think that pitching this entire movement through the blood and the sweat and the tears and the craftsman aspect of it, it's great. And I think that it's necessary, because you can kind of, that can be the hook to sink in to this younger generation, where you're creating something that they want, that looks to be enjoyable and fulfilling. But I don't know how far that's going to get with kind of the way that our residential construction industry is set up right now. So looking at this personally, right, as a craftsman in the year 2023, in order to kind of feel as though I'm doing my part in upholding this modern craftsman moniker, I not only have to develop the hard skills, I have to understand how to use the tools, how to be one with the tools, how to build, how to create. I have to have that artistic mindset. But I also need to be able to create an environment and a network of people and a community that is greater than my reach right now, or that is greater than my potential reach from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when Craftsman didn't have the reach, or they were putting stuff in a magazine to spread that knowledge, and people had to pay for it. And it took a couple months to turn around the content. We have an ability right now to reach tens, hundreds of thousands, millions of people, and instantly. And this isn't just saying me, but in the social media realm, our ability to create content that can reach and teach and affect people instantly is far greater than what it was um, 10 or 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It was just different. So I think that if we can share that wisdom and we can spread that wisdom, it helps everyone and it helps ourselves. And I think that, when I look at my potential impact on this industry right now, the way that my business has been set up, if I have a helper, I have what you would call an apprentice. I can teach that person for a couple of years and they can go off on their own. They can teach somebody at some point someday if that's the path that they decide to go. And maybe they don't. So maybe it just ends at that person. And then I get a new apprentice. You look at this from an exponential standpoint as far as how wide my impact can be, and it's very small. Maybe I have a dozen, 2 dozen apprentices, and I'm involved with some subs and some customers, and my family's around to kind of experience what I've learned and what I'm willing to share. But that reach is small. It's almost non-existent when you look at it in the grand scheme of things. But now you look at me getting on a podcast, or me sharing something on social, or partnering with people on social, um, teaching with companies like MT Copeland, and the ability to impact, writing for Fine Home Building, the ability to impact how many more people and then respond to questions and teach. Now, all of those lessons and those hardships and those struggles, they're not for nothing. There's value there. I didn't learn all of this and kill myself and bang my head against a wall and struggle through all of this to just take that with me to my grave when I die, or pass it on to a handful of people that can use it. And then, they pass it on to a handful of people. I can hit that outreach instantly through social media and through this podcast now. So I no longer have to kind of kill myself for 40 years looking to pass on enough of my experience and my expertise to this small handful of individuals, hoping to muster up some sort of sad legacy of my own, right? Gone are those days where you have to train an apprentice for years as this kind of futile attempt to salvage meaning out of your life and your hardships. I think that we have an opportunity now as these modern craftsmen to have a far greater, far more impactful and valuable experience, and create a far more valuable, impactful experience for those people that we allow into our network than we ever have had before. So that's always been the goal for the Modern Craftsman and for what I've done. And I'm realizing more and more that my time is sometimes better spent pulling back and advocating for the trades and getting on and interviewing people and kind of writing a blog post or spending time communicating what I feel is helpful to this industry, because my reach is exponentially greater this way, and I have a far more valuable impact this way. Our team, which has changed over the years, but is now Nick, myself, Doug, Catherine, and Ariana, has created a platform that boasts the capacity to reach tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people instantly. We have millions of downloads. Nick and I have hung on to this podcast and created a place that gives us an opportunity to speak to some of the brightest minds within our industry, to some of the most successful business owners, and to learn from them, to learn from their mistakes, to learn from their successes, to ask them questions, to ask what motivated them. What are your long-term lessons? What was important to you? What was the one thing that you wish somebody would have told you? Where we're able to tap into this on a weekly basis and then share it with you. And if you think about that, like how fast this is moving and the potential for who we can speak to and what we can learn and what we can share, and it doesn't cost really anyone anything, it's insane. And this is what I wish I had had when I was 23, when I was 25, and I was just starting my business, and I didn't know what way was up and I didn't know what to do to be able to tap into a network like this. And it's free and it's right at your fingertips. And you can refer back to years prior of episodes and podcasts and lessons and blog posts. It's all still there for you. It's actually incredible to think about. And this is what this community is all about. And this is what I feel embodies that modern craftsman ethos. this this isn't about being the best. It's not about being the most successful. It's not about being male, female, young or old. It's not about being black, white, purple, Asian, Mexican. It's about possessing that passion. It's about exploiting your interest, and it's about advocating for the trades and promoting craft and celebrating excellence, and spreading the word, right? Because all of this knowledge and all of these lessons and all of this wisdom that we all possess and that we've all gathered over the course of our lifetimes, it's silly to hold on to that. It serves you no purpose whatsoever. And I think that, I'm not a huge person on legacy. Like I think a lot of people, it's a driver for them. They create and establish a life because they want to have a legacy. They want to leave something behind. And that's just not what makes me tick. And that's not right or wrong. There's probably more people like me. There's probably people who aren't like me, but that's never been something that's really weighed heavily on my decision-making process. So to feel now, as though I may be able to create a long-standing impact, a long-lasting impact, it's nice to think about. And I don't think that I have the ego that this is the reason that I'm doing all of this, because that's just not what is important to me. I haven't created a business that I can pass on to somebody. I don't even have a son to carry on their name, which sometimes when I look at the rest of my family and the shit that goes around my head, I'm like, this is so good. Let's just end this name. Unfortunately, I have 3 other brothers, so the potential to having a boy and carry on this name, it might happen. But like for me, I'm not perpetuating this Grace name. But maybe I do have something to leave behind here. Maybe you guys all are a part of that and you're all part of this community. And it kind of got me thinking this quote by the Dalai Lama, and it says, share your knowledge. It's a way to achieve immortality. And maybe this is our legacy. Maybe this is, as a tradesperson, as a craftsman, as somebody who's involved, maybe this is what it means to have a legacy. And I think that this really is where I'd like to take the Modern Craftsman and kind of this hub and this brand that we put so much time and energy into. And you're all a part of that. And I'm super appreciative of that. I'm super grateful to have you guys here. And that pretty much wraps it up. And I'm far more pleased with the outcome of this podcast and kind of where it went than the last one. I didn't feel as though I properly and adequately articulated what I wanted to out of this and kind of what was on my mind and what I was feeling And this feels better. I feel as though I achieved something here, and it's there's value in this podcast, and you guys taking a half hour, let's see, a half hour, a little over a half hour, 45 minutes out of your day to listen to this. I feel better about this. So I know that this one is a bit more intellectual. I think that, I'll be alternating kind of what's on my mind and more practical. I had a few people reach out regarding the site protection podcast and looking to get into more details with that. So that's something that I can dig into. And then obviously, if I'm looking to create content on a weekly basis, I would love your input, our listeners' input as to what you'd like to speak about. If it's something that I do, specifically, if it's something regarding business, if it's family, lifestyle, whatever that may be, I would love your input and suggestions, because kind of conjuring up and conceiving these unique ideas on a weekly basis when I have other stuff going on is super tough. So pile them on me. I'll sort through them, and I'd love to dig into some of your own thoughts and what you guys want to hear from me. But as always, I appreciate your time. We appreciate your time. Listen to the regular Modern Craftsman recording with Nick, myself, and a guest. Doug produces them. They come out on Sunday nights late. A lot of people listen to them on their Monday mornings. And then these midweek episodes are coming out on Wednesday evenings. So you can listen to them Thursday morning at work. But I appreciate your time. Appreciate you hanging around, and I'll see you guys next week.